Hello, everybody. Welcome to Labyrinth 2023 and to our virtual Cafecito. My name is Diana Cadavid, and I'm the artistic director of the festival. Virtual Cafecitos are a series of candid and insightful conversations that are part of Labyrinth's industry programming for this year, where we invite different organizations to share their perspective on the industry and to discuss a variety of subjects of importance to the film and TV ecosystems. Today, our panel is presented by Popflick, and we have invited Nalip to lead this conversation on the challenges and changes of producing for a global and digital age. It is my pleasure to introduce Nalip's newly appointed executive director, Diana Luna, who will be moderating today's conversation. Welcome, Diana.
Thank you for the invitation to Virtual Cafecito. We're excited about bringing together this real great panel that we titled Producing in a Culture of Change and Innovation. Our first panelist is Frida Torresblanco. She's an award-winning producer based in New York City and Mexico, a former partner of Esperanto Filmoj and current CEO of Labyrinth Films. Frida has produced a variety of independent films, including The Dancer Upstairs, Disobedience, Pan's Labyrinth, Rudo y Cursi, as well as recently developing Satan is Real, starring Ethan Hawke. Jamie Gonsalves is Sundance Institute Creative Producing Fellow, Impact Partners Producing Fellow, Creative Capital Fellow, and one of 2015's 25 new faces in independent film. He began his career in documentary, currently producing both documentary and fiction projects. His collaborations with Juan Pablo González culminated in the 2022 Sundance hit Dos Estaciones. He's a co-founder of Sin Sitio Cine, a collective based in Mexico and the US, focused on producing works by directors working with their own communities. Carlos Lopez Estrada is an Oscar-nominated director and producer based in Los Angeles. He began his career in short form, quickly transitioning to feature films with the 2018 Sundance film Blind Spotting. Carlo has also directed Raya and The Last Dragon and the independent feature Summertime. Last year, he founded Anti-Gravity Academy, a hub for emerging creators focused on producing the next generation of independent filmmakers. So now that we have this incredible panel of producers, all coming from very different stages in life, but also with very different careers, I would like to learn about, or we want to learn about, how did you start producing? We can start with Carlos.
With me, my path into producing has been relatively short. I'm predominantly a director, and that's what I've been doing since, I graduated film school. And I think producing came to me as a necessity more than anything, just because I come from independent filmmaking. I'm used to I did music videos for like 10 years with my friends who I went to film school, and I was used to doing things in a very scrappy, very sort of like as with what you have kind of way. I made my first movie about 5 or 6 years ago, and I was thrown into the world of indie filmmaking without just a lot of knowledge about it. I made my first movie, Blind Spotting. Then I started working at Disney Animation, which was sort of like the biggest shift in world for me, because I was all of a sudden working at the studio with a lot of structure, a lot of money, a lot of people. And as soon as that happened for me, I realized that I really missed making movies independently, that my heart is sort of like in the indie world. So I tried to put together this film called Summertime. It was my second live action feature, and we did it for very, very little money with very little resources, all non-actors, a script that was sort of like evolving as we were shooting it. And anyway, all this to say that as we were putting this movie together, I realized that we just didn't have a lot of resources. So if I wanted the movie to sort of like have the standard and all of the sort of like tools that I needed, that I was gonna have to do a lot myself. So that's sort of like I became really hands-on with that film. And that sort of like just opened up this world of producing for me. And I repeat, it's early in my producing career, but I am now doing a couple of different projects that I'm very excited about. we'll talk about them in a second. Yeah, does that answer the question? Is that enough? Should I go deeper? No, okay.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. And this
Okay, good.
producing
Sorry.
that
Yeah.
world. Wonderful. What about you, Jamie? How did it all began?
I went to a college that did not have a film school. I didn't really know that. I knew film school existed, but I didn't like think about it for me. And I worked at a TV station driving the news van, like the satellite truck, from 2 a.m. till 7 a.m. as a job. And there was a camera there, and I was like learning that. And then I met a filmmaker. He was making his first feature doc, and I dropped out of college to make that movie with him. And I thought it would take a month or two, and it took 5 years. And that was at Tribeca in 2015. And then I was like, okay, well, so that was the first filmmaker I really had met in terms of like that project had already started, and then I joined, and then I learned to become much more intentional. And I'm very proud of that project, but like, what are the things that I want to champion, and who do I want to champion? And both my parents are artists. And like, what is the role? What is the job of the person who champions the director or the artist, the painter, the musician? And so also being like, I say this sometimes, but like creatively polyamorous. Like I don't have to choose one project. I could take like 3 to 5. And that's like much sexier to me than like one, which is scarier. And that's like where I come from.
It is a lot, but that's wonderful. What about you, Frida? How you start producing?
Well, for me it was a very like a second option for a career, because I really wanted to be a ballet dancer. So I was studying as a professional, and then quickly realized when I arrived to Cuba and a scholarship with Alicia Alonso that I was not that good, because the Russian kids were like 10 times better. So then, came back home thinking like, well, this is the end of the world, but I have to figure out what to do. And then I always, since I born, I guess, start like very little, watching tons of movies and going with my parents, that were like crazy cinephilos, going to watch every kind of movie almost every day, and also during the scholarship, because the ballet was like, we were having always 2 hours in between classes. So it was like, we were access to a cinema. That was like the part of the school or like arts. So I was like always having my lunch there. So I started watching tons of movies at a really early age. And then we were on a trip to see the windmills who inspired El Quijote in Castilla-La Mancha. And it was just a lucky moment that was with a bunch of filmmakers sitting in the same bus. And we were divided by different small buses, and they asked me, what are your favorite directors? Or your favorite movie? I know, they said, what is your favorite movie? And I said, no, it's my favorite directors, because I saw so many movies. And they were laughing because I was 15. And then, so what are your favorite directors? And I said, well, I love Tarkovsky, I love Casavetes, I love Bergman, I love this. And they were like, oh my God, what movie? So they would start this argument about the films and what was my point of view, where they were their point of view. And the weekend was like just talking about movies. And I met Fernando Trueba, Manolo Iborra, a bunch of people from Spain. And at that moment, they were young and hip. So on Monday, they called my home and they said, well, we're going to start a film. Would you like to join the crew and have a, summer job? And then, in Spain, there's like 4 months of, the kids that don't do anything, and the parents are desperate and they want you to have a job. And I said, yes, of course, I'm coming to the set. So they give me, obviously I was bringing the coffee to the director, but really quickly, that summer, they offered me a second AD, because, I was like, arriving so early to the set, I was like watching everything, reading everything, wanted to learn, leaving the last one. And they told me like, well, you can do the second AD. And then I did few years, like the next summers, before, even during my career, when I started film and journalism, like doing AD jobs. But then I realized that it was not what I wanted. I wanted to really, really craft, the film. I wanted to find the theme. I wanted to make everything happen, and I wanted to be, in a more creative place. So I decided I need to move to production, and everybody was like, "Well, you're crazy. You're already first ID, and you didn't even finish college." And it's like, "Yeah, but I need to start again." So I started all over again, as a production assistant. And I have a tremendous opportunity with Simon Ben-Sakane, and that time was like a #1 producer in Europe. So they give me this job because I was bilingual, and El Zorro. and then it was just for 4 months, because it was when I was having holidays. And everybody told me, like, he's gonna fire you, because producers, no one can work with him because you have to be so good. So he's gonna fire you in a couple of weeks, but I mean, try to learn as much as you can. And he called me to his office, and I thought, like, okay, this is the end of the world. He's gonna fire me now. And he told me that he wanted me to be the production coordinator from the entire show. And I said, I have to tell you the truth, English is not my first language. I just cannot write all the communications, because something's going to have a mistake and you're going to look bad, etc. So I can't take this position. He says, no. The production coordinator is going to be your assistant, and the other 2 are going to work under you. I want you to think. And I think that was the first moment in my life that I realized, okay, I am a producer. That's what I want in life. Mm-hmm. And right after that, I started my first film, But that was the confidence of, like, that was the trust of this really, really important man who triggered that to me. So I think mentoring is essential in this business.
Yeah, it seems like in your case, guys, you began as, you are creators, and you have this ability to see everything within the film. But then becoming a producer also implies not only having the creative mind, but also being a structure and really looking into all those finance details and so forth. So that intersection between understanding the duties of a producer versus being a creator, how do you handle that? And how do you find that balance because again, Frida, you chose to be a producer, or Carlos, maybe you came out of a circumstance, and Jamie, well, because that's where you were able to strive. But how do you find that balance between your creativity and becoming a producer? It's like the right and left brains working at the same time. Jamie?
If you want, I can start, but
yeah, go ahead, of course.
I really believe a lot of people think that, so there is very different kind of producer, and we need to identify the different hats, right? So there's like some producers, and they come in on board and they put some money, and they have the title of producers because they help in the finance. Other people, and they're super famous, they're just producers because they are, and they just put their name, but they don't do anything, and they just like, okay, I'm mentoring this movie, and that's it. There are other kind of producers like I am, that I'm doing everything. So, and when you're saying everything means absolutely everything, it says like finding the IP, finding the money to do the development, finding the writer, convince the director, bring everybody on board, bring in the cast, and then make the movie happen, then distribute the movie, sell the movie. So that kind of producer is absolutely creative. There is no way that you can be and doing that job without being creative. Obviously, you need to know a lot about math and handling the budget, and always sustain the budget. It's a very, very difficult balance between how much you want the movie to look and how much money do you have, right? Mm-hmm. So then you have to make sure that you're not going to break the balance, because not some productions are really, really tiny, but you really have to be creative in the sense that trying to put the money where the people are going to watch the frame, right? And trying to put the rest.
Yeah, and Jamie, how do you work with that as well? I mean, because we're talking about in this particular, yes, producers that are fully involved. It would be nice to be just the name and the funder of the big project and be co-producer. That's what we should strive for as well in our careers. But how do you work that out, Jamie?
I mean, when there's less money, you do more things and more things outside of producing. Like, there are a bunch of films I've worked on that I'm producing that I do sound, or that I have done second camera, or various other jobs related to making the film happen that are things that I prefer not to. I'm a horrible sound person, but sometimes there's like no other option. I mean, Frida's right. It's like, to be a good producer, you have to understand what the director wants, like why the movie needs to exist a certain way, and then come up with alternatives. Like, okay, you want a scene with this happened. We were shooting a movie in Jalisco and in Los Altos de Jalisco, and the director wanted a scene with zebras and antelopes and camels and stuff, but real ones, which is like kind of hard to find in terms of like rural. I mean, rural anywhere, honestly, but and it was like, okay, what is the purpose of this scene, and like, could these be, what animals do these actually need to be? And like, we found 2 zebras, but we did not find camels or antelopes, and we didn't end up shooting this thing. But it was like understanding, like, okay, what are, this is maybe such a bad example, but like understanding like why this movie needs, you know, wild safari animals, like it does it, and what purpose does that serve, and how can we strive to reach the same point and purpose? And that only works if I understand the purpose of the zebra, right? If I don't understand the purpose of the zebra, then I'm no use. Then I'm just saying no to something without understanding its ramifications for the greater picture. And so it's always just this like balancing act of, and that's why I only come onto projects in development. I also learned that to protect the film.
And with you, Carlos, because you have navigated from the big studio to having dedicated to short films and so forth, I mean, you've been like in every possible scenario. How have you handled that? And
I think for me, I've had so many different experiences as a director working with producers, obviously lots of really great ones and some that have been unfortunate. And I'm because of it, I have, I think, such a keen understanding of, at least for me, what really inspires me to do the best work and what's going to allow me to do the best possible job and have the best possible movie. So as I'm getting into producing, I'm just very conscious of how I can create an environment where the directors that I'm working with have all of those tools that maybe I wish I had had in the projects where my relationship with the producers was not as good. So I feel like, you know, Frida was mentioning sort of like her type of producing, and obviously just because of my background, I can't say that I am as well-rounded as she is. I think I'm definitely a lot more focused on the creative, and you know, I know very well how to prep a movie and how to put a shot list together and how to just like creatively try to get to like the soul and the heart of like what makes a movie special. So I think I'm like hyper focused in making sure that the directors that I'm working with have the tools to do that and have the space to do that and feel, you know, inspired and motivated to do that. And what I've been doing, because you know, there's certain things that I know how to look at a budget, I know how to work within a budget, but you know, I can't really like budget a movie. So I've been partnering with other producers who complement sort of like my skill set, who also see the value in what I can bring to the table, but who can like, you know, supplement it with very different types of skill sets. So for this one particular movie that I'm producing this summer that we're shooting in a couple of months, I'm working with 2 other producers. One of them comes from a line producing background and has, you know, all the experience in the world, sort of like doing the boots on the ground physical production stuff. And we're working with another producer who comes from a film financing background, so has a lot of experience fundraising, has a lot of experience sort of like on the financial side of how to put a movie together, which is also something that, you know, I just haven't had that much experience in. So I feel like I've been able to just like surround myself with people who can sort of like help in the areas that I may just not have as much experience on, and it's been okay. I think we've been able to just like really come into these projects creatively, and I do think I was very self-conscious when I was first starting doing this, because you know, I was not trained as a producer, my experience is not as a producer, but I have noticed quickly that I do think my unique it speaks about diversity, right? Diversity of experience, diversity of background, diversity of point of view. I have noticed that my very particular path to producing has allowed me to interact with directors in a way that it's like very, very intimate, in a way that I think the directors I'm working with really appreciate.
And you mentioned something very interesting, and it's about how do you create those teams and collaborations that are that could be as diverse and just as you can possibly think. In your case, Frida, I mean, having you this experience working with Mexico, with the US, with Europe, how do you find that force within your own work into working with all different kinds of experiences, and not only that, but different systems as we change from one country to the other?
Well, you carry on your, I mean, I think experience really matters, right? So you carry on that from one place to the other, and you just adapt. You know, it's not the same, obviously, to do a film, you know, in Morocco than in Sweden or like in England. But I mean, basically everybody's a film, you know, like film crews. I think all of us, every single person, and you should never dismiss anyone in a set. They're there because they're special. Right? It's people that they really want.
I'm sorry.
You got a bird.
A bird just flew into my office. I'm just freaking out because it's like flying. I'm gonna try to catch. I'll be right back. 2 seconds. Sorry, I'm so sorry.
I saw the bird flying in. That's good luck. But sorry, Frida, you can continue.
I don't know if we need to stop and redo it. The question, perhaps.
Yeah, let's just let's stop and redo
Yeah.
that.
For the editing, would be much easier.
Yeah.
I saw the bird flying by.
I didn't notice anything.
Okay, so should I wait for Carlos or?
Yeah, well, we'll give it a second just to wait.
You can put you know, silence here.
Yeah, it may take me a second just because it's a bit of situation. So I'll just go off for 2 seconds, but I'll be right back.
No worries.
Just put in silence yours, and then.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and then and Carlos, if you could just let me know in the chat when you're ready to jump on.
So I think Frida will begin, right? Because after my question,
Sure.
or?
Yeah, start the question one more time. Sorry, thank you.
So as we see that there is a lot of, oh, I got distracted. Give me just 1 second. I'm thinking about bird and I don't remember the question. I will start all over again. So as we see, I mean, we have all different collaborations, transnational collaborations, and I think that brings a lot of strength to productions. In your experience, Frida, that you have worked not only in the US, but Mexico and Europe, how do you find that strength, and how do you bring those teams together, or the experience that you gain from working in different countries?
So, well, look, basically, I was incredibly lucky. I'm so grateful, you know, to have the chance to really work. I mean, work all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
I think experience really matters, and what you do, or what I learned to do, is like I learned with like a very strict, you know, British school, and that gave me, you know, the parameters of what is like right and what is wrong in the set, and also how to put together the crews. And I never dismiss any crew about any, even if they don't have too much experience, because I'm a big believer that people who works in film are special, you know, like even if you're like just the driver, or like the guy who's cleaning the set and working on the props, you know, everybody's really special. And then if they're incentive enough, they're giving everything, right? I remember an amazing experience that we had in Labyrinth in Chile, and people were telling me, well, the crew is not really experienced, you know, this is very difficult, and people could go over there because it's really the end of the world. And it was one of the best shooting experience ever, because even if they're not, they didn't have, you know, the chance to work in too many movies, they were given all, you know, they would never complain. They were like working so long hours. And you know, remember that my husband came to visit the set, and he's working in startups, you know, like for technology and artificial intelligence and stuff. He was like, oh my God, I never saw a startup like this, because it looks like you guys know each other for years and years, because they're working so coordinated. I was like, no, we met 3 weeks ago, right? So that's the magic of a set, you know, you choose the right people. But you
Exactly.
have like an instinct, to see that they have the grit to work on.
That's wonderful. And Jamie, with you also, you have similar experiences as you work with also in Mexico and the US. What is your experience on that regard?
The thing that I find the most fun is the cultural differences between like every crew, like even crews like from Missouri to LA, like vastly different paces of life. Doing things in rural Mexico versus Mexico City is much different as well. And kind of syncing up to that rather than trying to instill like, I mean, it's from simple stuff to like how heavy a breakfast should be, or when do you bring coffee in, and just not imposing, I think, where I come from or what I eat for lunch or what, I don't know, simple things that are gestures. I think so much of this stuff is like a hungry crew is the least happy place to be. And so much of this centers around like, if you have good food and it's food that people want to eat. And I mean, that's just like symbolic. It's a silly example, but it's, I think, quite true. You can't bring Chipotle and pizza more than like once ever, if at all. But I think, I don't know, it's about like, and I think that extends to everything else, right? If you like listen culturally to what people want and what people behave with and what people like, and you sync up to that, then I don't know, you also learn about yourself and you learn keep yourself open. I don't know. I liked Frida's answers a lot. I don't really feel like I have a lot to add to that. So I was really pulling at straws.
And also,
grasping.
no, that's perfect. But also going beyond that, the cultural aspect. Let's talk about the financial aspect. If you have found the benefits of working with transnational agreements where we understand that other countries might have funds for developing projects, others may not, and the different ways that you actually find the resources to develop your films. Have you found any, I mean, what is your experience with that, basically?
I mean, I'll be very brief. I really like doing international co-productions for artistically risky films. I think there are certain films that I do that are gonna struggle commercially, and I know that. I'm not pretending that they're gonna be Barbarian or do some immense amount of box office or hit some streaming deal, but and so international co-productions can be really, really good for that. I mean, they're really good for offsetting risk in general, but that allows to do projects that are, like Dos Estaciones was a French, Mexican, and US co-production. And that allowed us I couldn't reasonably ask people to invest, $1 million in that movie. One, because there's other ways of making the movie, but two, because there's, it would have created limitations on what we could do creatively. And so that's what's exciting to me about international co-productions. Not that you shouldn't make commercial projects, but that you have the opportunity to do things that don't lose people a bunch of money.
Exactly. And Carlos, as you were talking about also, I mean, bringing people from different experiences and so forth. Have you encountered also that opportunity of you see that as a way to work with the international co-productions?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm doing a lot of co-productions here, which just for me have been the best way to learn, just by partnering up with producers with different levels of experiences, producers I look up to, who are willing to sort of like, work with me. And I think internationally as well, I haven't really done a project yet that is an international co-production. There's a couple of things that are like in development that I think hopefully soon will pan out, but I if you ask me again in a year, I think I'll have a very different answer. But I do think, yeah, it's as both Frida and Jamie were mentioning it I think it's forced me to like really think of different ways of getting a movie made, because I think even though there's a million ways, even just within the States, I feel like there's structures and processes that are a little bit more traditional in terms of just how movies are made here. And I think that the projects that I've explored abroad, all of a sudden you understand that there's different types of government funding, that there's different just like ways to kickstart a production and to get backing and to just like think about doing film. So it's been really enlightening to just see different perspectives and learn different ways to troubleshoot and learn different ways to create.
Yeah, and Frida, as you know, like times have changed. I mean, the way producers are working nowadays, it's different. I mean, what do you see in the future into how the producer's job will change in terms of how do they find the financing, or how do they how things are changing basically? I mean, we know that the industry looks very different nowadays, but in your perspective, what is for us to expect?
Look, I wish I could have like the really key answer for this, because I think we're going through under tremendous correction, you know, in the industry, where we see the reaction of the streamers and mayors and studios and everybody shrinking and make it like a much narrow place, you know, for producers to navigate. So I really believe that is only about one thing, you know, keep yourself incredibly creative and on the top of the wave. So that means we saw, or at least I did, you know, all these examples from the past where something is have success, and then there's like hybrids and coming so many of them. And the result is that the audience is very smart and they cannot care less about that, and they don't see it. So they lost so much money, you know, trying to follow the trends and trying to follow the agenda and do what they think that the algorithm was saying. I think right now we're gonna, what I think my plan is not to follow any others, right? As I did before, and just listen to my own voice and trying to find the projects, and they're universal and they're interesting and they're like different and fabulous. Because I think that's the only way that you could survive, you know, and that's because I really believe that a bunch of, it's very sad, but a bunch of companies are going to disappear, you know, because if you don't have the core, if you don't have really, you know, the person who's the captain who navigates the boat and knows how to really find the right IP for the future, not the IPs that you think that you should do right now, right? Then I think it's going to be very difficult to survive. And that's my token about this situation.
Doing it your own way. What is your take, Carlos, on?
I feel exactly the same. I think that there's a lot of producer companies who are chasing sort of like what's hot, what did well at the box office the previous year. You know, we had like the incredible success of Everything Ever All at Once, and now like the amount of projects that feel like are just trying to ride that wave right now. I mean, it's cool for many reasons, but it's also, I think, it's just interesting, I think, to notice how success really just drives so many other decisions being made, just being able to point to that and say, like, that worked, therefore, you know, we'll do something similar. But I think similarly, I'm just very inspired by finding original stories, by finding different points of view, by working with filmmakers who I believe, you know, have a worldview that is exciting and fresh and different, and I think the best movies come from those types of collaborations rather than from, you know, someone trying to follow a trend or a formula, or, you know, thinking of this statistically or with like a business oriented brain and trying to sort of like connect the dots and then execute. So I don't know, I think maybe this is like not the most business savvy answer, but I do try to sort of like lead with where the gut takes me and where I feel like emotion and inspired, and I feel like if if there's a thing where you hear about the story, where you hear about a movie, or you meet a filmmaker and you just get these like tingly feeling that there's something special here. If I feel like if it inspires me and if it really surprises me, the chances are that it'll have that effect on other people. So I try to listen to that feeling more than to any sort of like hard logic.
Yeah, I like that. I think this is a matter of following your instinct. I think that's the best way to move forward. What is your experience, Jamie, also within thinking about the new projects? And of course, producers are always thinking, well, there's a new project, but yeah, we need the funds. We need to go chase them. But what is your take nowadays into seeking for funding and having the projects that you believe in getting produced?
I've become much more discerning with like, I'm gonna steal a line from Teresa Sanchez, who talks about, she's an actress in Mexico who I think is like, my opinion, the greatest living actress right now in the world. And just also the sweetest, kindest person. But she talks about like choosing movies to be in if they're made with like a heart and a soul, and that's being like her fundamental baseline. Because, and it's not that her character has to be any type of way. She plays she's in Lila Aviles' film, she's in Juan Pablo's film, she's in Nico Pereda's film, she's going to be in a ton of other movies in Mexico. But that there's like love behind the movie, and there's like love in cinema. And I think a lot of the movies and the directors that Frida mentioned earlier, and actually Carlos's work as well, like have that feeling to it. And I think that is hard to quantify on paper. Like, how could you say, oh, that film is made with love, or that film's not made with love? But like, what is love to you, and what is like a soul to you, and what feels right? Which is an extension of a gut feeling. But then there's also the practical element of like, is this not only an interesting film, but like, is this sorry, I'm at my parents' house right now, and the cat is sprinting up and down maybe it's trying to get this bird. And it's like, am I the right person to join this project? Because there's lots of projects that I get approached about, or that I read, or that I talk about, that I don't do. And it could be that I'm not the right person to do it. And that happens more frequently than I am the right person to do the project. And there's a ton of stuff that I see and get, and I'm exposed to, that I would love to support and champion, that it's either not my skill set, or I'm not the right person, or that the marriage doesn't make sense. And, it's like dating. There's no reason you're not dating. I mean, there's reasons that you don't date lots of people who are totally fabulous.
Exactly.
I would like to add something that I think, for the people who's listening to us, I mean, could be actually uplifting in the middle of this complicated time that we're navigating in. But there is a real flip side on the strategy, through the streaming services, because they aren't generate like a huge hits. Even though if we love them, right? For example, Succession, because it's extraordinary, they didn't have too much audience. For example, they were having only 2 million every week. So that generates that they're going to go really low into the budgets. And I really feel that is going to be the tendency. So what happens? So we're getting like more closer to the conventional television. So they're going to lower the budgets, but they're going to open the doors to a different kind of ideas, right? So that could be a huge window of opportunity for independent producers, to come there and says like, okay, this is not going to be that expensive. We don't need like such a huge budget, but why don't you try something that might generate a lot of audience, right? It's sad because, also I think the television, the typical telenovela or daily show is going to be a huge tendency as well in the future.
Yeah, different content. And what is your opinion also, Carlos? And we're gonna close our this is a final question into, as we know, I mean, we have emerging filmmakers in the need to be lifted up. Have you, or what is your take into how do you support emerging filmmakers into getting seen, becoming and growing within their career paths? I mean, as you did it already, are you looking into their work, or what is the approach to the emerging filmmakers?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we're entering this really exciting stage where I think people are paying attention maybe in areas where historically they haven't, and where I feel like it's becoming more and more necessary for everyone to understand how important it is to, open doors and generate opportunities and like give serious platforms to voices who just for a long, long time just haven't had that like path towards becoming a working director. So I mean, I think it's exciting for a number of reasons. First, because filmmaking tools are as accessible and as inexpensive as ever. Not to say that making film is not still a highly sort of like financially complicated medium, but right now you can edit and shoot stuff on phones for relatively low cost, and I would like to think that those costs are just going to continue to come down. So I feel like the ability for someone who's just starting their career and may not have a lot of contacts, may not have a lot of resources, can put a project together on their own with minimal amount of money. I think that's really special. And I don't know, at least on I'm doing everything that I can. I was not, it's not like I have a 20-year career where I can just look back and say like, well, 20 years ago, this is like me being an emerging filmmaker was like not that long ago. So I think that I can thankfully pull from the experience that I had a couple of years ago and just say, this is things that I struggled with. I really needed access. I really needed mentorship. I really needed just like these specific types of opportunities. And now what I'm trying to do is just sort of like look back at that person who I was a couple of years ago and just say, okay, how can I, with the little tools that I have, provide those resources to people who may be looking for similar types of things. So with the company that I started last year, we've been like really trying to think out of the box in terms of how to generate mentorship opportunities. So for example, this movie that we're shooting this summer, we opened up 2 like line items in the budget for a directing and a producing mentee to join us for the entire production, and we're going to be paying them a weekly rate and treating them as part of the crew. But these are people who just haven't had on-set experience and have maybe done a lot of other types of projects, but just not like on a professional movie set. So for example, that I think about me of 7-8 years ago, and that type of opportunity could have been a game-changing thing for me. So we're hoping that every movie that we do moving forward can have this similar mentorship model, and that to me is super important. We're also through my company, we're putting together an incubator that is just aimed to find and develop and package first-time films from emerging directors. So I think we're all doing what we can, but I would like to think that things will continue to get better, and that the need for authentic voices telling stories that we haven't heard before is greater than ever. So I feel optimistic that our industry will continue to like make real big strides to supporting these emerging voices.
Mm-hmm. And Jamie, what are the opportunities that you are seeing coming?
I mean, I just want to like compliment Carlos, because I haven't heard of that type of specific mentorship for like longitudinal wise for a project. I know like people who bring people to set to shadow or to do something here and there. But like building that into the budget as something that is like, this is integral to the film is fucking dope. I'm gonna borrow that. I will give you credit, but I'm gonna borrow that.
Oh, thanks.
But to tag onto that, and then I'll get to the emerging thing, but what I've done, I bet Carlos, you and I are about the same age, but I remember asking lots of people questions like, what does the budget look like? And what is this? And everyone was so cagey. And so what I've done is I've like, if people ask, I will send them grants we've won from Sundance or other places for Caballerango or other films I've done. Decks, budgets, whatever, in Excel, in Movie Magic. Because I feel like there's this unnecessary protection that we're thinking like, oh, I don't want to share a budget because I don't want people to know how it's put together, what it is. But like hundreds, if not thousands of people see your budget anyways. Like, why wouldn't you share it with people who you're not in competition with, who are a bit younger than you, who are earlier in their career? Like, you're not going to lose your job, whatever your job is, because someone younger gets access to how things should be done. And maybe they'll learn things along the way and pass it forward, pass it down. And I used to have a Dropbox that had like all of these successful grants and budgets and stuff in it, but and I would just pass that link around, which I could do that again. But yeah, and now I forgot the question. I got
oh, you actually answered perfect. And Frida, one last thought about what is ahead for this career and for the Latino content and your job as a producer.
Well, Latino content. Well, we need just to scream harder, like a Johnny Leguizamo, because no one's paying attention of anything, that is Latin. It's such an anachrony because we have like the biggest shows really that create history, like La Casa de Papel.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, what is that? I mean, this is Spanish people, they're brilliant. But then silence. And then you don't see any representation in the United States about our community. And I don't see the alliances, like between the community and the directors and the producers and the actors either. So it looks like everybody is trying to do their little work by their own. But you know what? We're not going anywhere. Because I think the studios and the streamers, they feel like, okay, I can put like a mark into the Black community because it's one. But the Latin is something that spreads, like we don't know you're Argentinian or Spanish or Mexican or Colombian, and they don't see it as one thing. So I think, first of all, we need definition. Second of all, we need to start working together. Third of all, we need to request help, grants, opportunities. I don't think the mentorship stops with the first movie. For example, right now I'm producing the movie of Daniel Poller, which is his first film, his opera prima. I'm crazy excited about this guy. I discovered him, like I've been helping him before the film, and now he has the first movie, and it's great, but it's one. We need something bigger than that, we need something like it is like the community, and not only with the first-time filmmakers. I need help, they need help, everybody needs help.
Yeah.
All of us, we're navigating along here, and we need to be, an army going and taking like a little piece of what we deserve, because the 20% of the audience of this country, America, is Latin. So we need answers, from the people who's like giving the budgets in the studios and the streamers.
And I feel very optimistic just by listening to you and also by the community that we're surrounded of filmmakers, that this is a moment where I do believe that we are coming together, and like ideas like yours, Carlos, of having a line in the budget for mentorship, that you're looking for new talent, that you are being supportive of each other. I think that could be easily replicated. And I think that if one person believes in mentorship, in supporting, in sharing, and in creating this community, then it goes to the next, to the next, to the next, and we can definitely become stronger as a filmmaking community. And I'm very happy that we put together this panel. Again, we're all here for each other, and we are really looking forward to create more impact, to have more successful stories like yours. And I'm looking forward to hear more from you in the near future. Thank you very much to Nalip, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Carlos.
Gracias,
Thank you, Frida.